I guess to start off with, what I like to sort of ask my guests is just a sort of bit like an interview, I guess. Sort of bring yourself to life. Tell us how you got into this weird and wonderful world of exhibitions. So yeah, it'd be great to sort of understand your background.
Yeah, no, thank you. Look, I guess like most people, we fell into it, and I fell into it, and then I equally got a bit lucky. Look, I like the environment. You know, I always wanted to work in something that was kind of fast paced and fun. And I was lucky. I joined Informa straight from university, Informa Telecoms and Media, which, you know, looking back now, is about as good as it gets. Right? It was a fantastic time for the sector. So I joined in 2000. We were running GSM World Congress, now known as Mobile World Congress. And we were just, everything was flying. You know, we obviously saw different times, challenging times, but it was a great sort of sounding board and a great introduction to how events work, how publications work, and the like. After about 6 or 7 years, I started to get a bit bored, and I guess, you know, this is one of the challenges with events in general. A lot of what we do is quite repetitive. So I did a professional postgraduate diploma in marketing. I thought, I'm a salesperson and I want to understand my customer better, so I'm going to train to be a marketer. I also thought there was no decent professional qualifications in sales, so it kind of made sense to sort of get a professional qualification in something commercial. And that ended up leading me out of the business. So I then went and left the exhibition industry altogether, and did 4 years as a marketing director for a company called Babcock. And what was lovely about this was I was then the other side of the fence. So I was in their education division, and I bought and attended BET as an exhibitor. So I bought stands at BET and attended BET for 3 years. So, you know, I wanted to put my sort of self in the customer's shoes and put myself well and truly in the customer's shoes for a few years. I then got sort of lured back, and I was the MD of C5 Communications, which was still is a sort of brilliant but small conference business, focusing on many legal conferences. You know, owner-run, obsessive around quality, and I was really taught how to write brilliant conference programs there. Then left and went to EMAP. Again, incredible team, Retail Week, incredible brand. And thoroughly enjoyable time. And I think, you know, you sort of look back on the different times of your career and think what happened then, and I learned how to run awards. You know, so I'd never really done awards before. I'd always done conferences, I'd done big events.
It's something different. Yeah.
And you know, so I spent, you know, C5 taught me to write conferences. You know, EMAP taught me to produce awards, and then on to Ocean Media, where I was COO for 4 years. Ocean and Mark Allen, very similar businesses in that you've got, you know, on my role, very similar in that you're looking at publishing and events. You've got large teams, you've got multiple formats, you've got multiple sectors, lots and lots of products. You know, some winning, some losing all the time. People being brilliant, people being challenging all the time. Obviously, main difference being Ocean was PE backed, and you know, you got a private equity house that's really trying to get out. Because they all want to get out, right? Not because it was a particularly bad investment, but because they want their money back in a certain amount of time. And then you've got the Mark Allen, the Allens, which is very totally family run, and a real looking at the long term.
Yeah, which we're talk more about. So it's interesting your sort of career. You know, some people, either by choice or just by circumstance, choose to work for one company for, you know, I guess most of their career. And obviously you've worked for 3 or 4 obviously significant companies in senior roles. Do you think that's something you always planned looking back? Do you think that was always going to happen in terms of the type of person you are, or it's just circumstance?
I don't think it was planned. I think it was circumstance. I think being an MD in an events business is a relatively high risk role.
How so?
Really?
How so? Why'd you say that?
In that, you know, you're constantly measured on
Right.
performance. You've got to be delivering all the time. looking back, I talk about C5 as being a great time in understanding how to write conferences. It was a brilliant and brutal time in learning how to be an MD. Because, and again, I'm happy to talk about this a bit later, but there's an assumption that you've made it, you're the MD, and you sit there and you go, this is cool, isn't it? And until one day someone flies in from the States and goes, we found a new MD. Right. You go, oh, okay. So you've got to always be doing better. Sure. You've got to always be improving. And I think, sometimes you've got to live these lessons to understand them.
So if I'm not mistaken, you took on your position of MD of Mark Allen Group Exhibitions in and around the start of the pandemic time?
Yeah, very much so. So actually, my desk was ready, my laptop was ready, and Mark phoned me on the Sunday and went, this is looking a bit worse than we thought. And that was the week the lockdown came in.
Wow. So mid-March.
So it was March 16th was my original start date.
Wow. So what were you thinking? What were you thinking? Cast your mind back. What was your what was your mind telling you?
Well, I think we're all very optimistic at the start. And it was, Mark and I said, well, let's give it a couple of weeks. And they were fantastic. They're incredibly loyal people. And Mark and I would communicate every couple of weeks, and it would be like, okay, what's happening now? So it was actually quite fortuitous because I've got young kids, and my wife is still working, so I was doing a lot of the homeschooling and things like that.
So you just joined a business in a senior position, running an industry sector which wasn't able to do much. And obviously, when you go into a new role, you want to hit the ground running. You want to prove yourself to yourself, and obviously your new colleagues, both up and down. Not wanting to dwell on it for too much, but what was that sort of first year like? What were the things you were having to do that you thought you wouldn't be doing?
Look, I think the first year was far more reactive than you would expect going into a business as an MD. So absolutely, we were working out all the time what we should be doing and how we should be doing things. There was, and you'll know, having been through the period yourself, there was a sort of, will we be restarting in March? Will we be restarting in September? How will that work? Pushing. There's a lot of negotiation with venues and that sort of thing, which I suppose is quite frustrating because ultimately a lot of it didn't really add any value to our customers or anything. We quickly developed virtual events. So I came in as soon as, so the immediate reaction, I think, for most companies was furlough.
Sure.
So I came into Mark Allen as soon as we started to take people off furlough. In Mark's words, there's not a lot of point arriving as an MD when you haven't got a team. So it was, as people were coming back from furlough, as we started to get an understanding of, okay, this is the world now, we have to make it work. But what had been going on before I arrived, which is fantastic, and the thing to Mark Allen as a group performed really well through the pandemic. And the bit that people don't realise is obviously we're a huge publisher, 100 different publications, and all of those publications were going to offices that no one was in. So it's not actually that, hey, we need to digitalize the events because we need to make some money. It's actually, we have to completely change how we do everything.
Yeah.
So that digital shift, was already happening, has been happening in publications for 10, 15 years, but the pandemic supercharged it. And then anything happening in any corner of Mark Allen was replicated in another corner of Mark Allen.
Sure.
And that meant that, we already had big webinar series that were happening. We already had a lot of digital activity that would be akin to what events companies would go, okay, we've got to know.
Sure. I mean, credit to you though, obviously coming in expecting to do one role and then essentially having, I guess, to do another and pivot. I've spoken to individuals, companies where they hired senior people, and actually within a few weeks, you know, that because they hired a person to do a specific job, and then all of a sudden that person, not fault of their own, doesn't have that experience to do, you know, whether it's they were hired to grow a business through acquisition, and obviously there weren't any acquisitions, or grow a business through organic launches, and there weren't any. So I guess you had to, excuse the phrase, sort of pivot your own sort of thinking as to how you can make a difference and sort of align yourself with the strategy of the company. I want to get to present day. Tell me about Mark Allen Group today and your role within it, please, as MD of the exhibition business.
Okay, so the exhibition business is about 40 events. We look after the larger events within the group, and we look after all the pure expos. So I've got around about 70 members of staff. The group itself is 460. So the way we run events across all the different sectors. The rest of Mark Allen is predominantly divided up by industry type. So we've got a healthcare division, education division, dentistry, media division, agriculture, and then we've got MA Business as well, which is another publication. It's a publication business, but that has a slightly broader offering of sectors. So it's a typical MD role, really, and it's sort of commercial leadership and day-to-day general management. I'm given a lot of autonomy, which is great, and I said the sort of things we're doing now. So there's a lot of work around developing new products, new launches, improving what we've got, and as you see, obviously in the news, that we do like to make acquisitions. So
which we'll come and talk about.
Always looking at those as well. So you know, I have a team reporting into me. They're exhibition directors and they're portfolio directors. So they're divided up usually by the different sectors they serve. We also have an ops director and a marketing director that work across everything. Going back to that, you know, I won't use the word pivot, but flexing. We had a lot of flexing when we first started, and I was also an exhibition director as well as MD until the middle of last year, actually, when we said, you know what, things have stabilized enough. We'll make the hire now. And we've made an excellent hire, so that's good.
And for those that aren't aware, obviously you've mentioned, you know, obviously you run the exhibition side of the business, but obviously there are other areas and publications. Talk to me about the interaction between you, your team. I'm assuming you don't operate in silos. You're serving communities essentially in different ways. How does that manifest itself day to day?
We don't operate in silos. Absolutely not. But that requires work. That requires constant work. And you know, I think there's a good analogy is to sort of think about the competitiveness between siblings. We're a bit like that, but then you have exactly the same competitiveness within a sales team in general. So we serve the same markets, and we have salespeople who are competing for the same pounds, really, or dollars. You know, it is just a reality of what we do. But what's great is we work hard to remain aligned. We work hard. We have lots of sort of strategy days together, so we know exactly what the different magazines and publications are doing, and then the events often work very closely. So editors are involved in developing programs. Salespeople do also sell across. So we've got salespeople who sell magazines and sell exhibition space. So we're kind of aligned, I think, as much as you can practically be without being, you know, a business that's entirely in verticals. You know, Mark's vision is to have a major exhibition for every brand we have, and we have 100 brands. So I've got my work cut out, and you know, I'm not going to do that by trying to create silos or carve anything off. There's certainly there's no desire on my part to do that.
Because ultimately, what we're doing here is serving a community in the best way possible. I guess, rather than looking at our own vested interests and thinking, right, I've got a publication here and I've got an exhibition there. How can we maximize it? You just sort of reference the fact that you get together, obviously speak about, you know, how you can collaborate best to serve that community. Obviously, okay, I speak to lots of people that only run exhibitions, don't have publications. Some people, you know, have said we just want to go down the exhibition route. That's, you know, whether it's 2 or 3 days a year. Yes, we'll do some serving the community through digital now, specifically webinars, but obviously you have publications as well. Tell me about how that approach maybe has evolved and changed post-pandemic in terms of serving a community through a multimedia approach. Anything that's changed and what the communities are telling you how they want to be served. I know it's quite a big, broad question, but give us your.
I think what's so yeah, this is a really interesting topic. It's a really big question, and communities is such a buzzword at the moment.
Yeah.
But I suppose what I would throw out there as a question to it is: do the end users want to be part of communities? Do they accept they're part of communities? So,
good point. Yeah.
And answering it, or your question, which is what are the communities asking for? Well, they're certainly not being asked to be labelled as communities. They want a service that we provide. So we look after 100 communities, and we have done for many, many years. We also have products we call communities, of which we've only got a handful, which are the kind of things that everyone's trying to master right now. That the 24/7, 365 online, rich engagement type service. Now, I think what we've learned, and this does answer your question about the multi-format approach to serving communities, is actually it's the benefit is to us, and it is from a product development and from a marketing perspective. So if you can combine kind of demographic, transactional, behavioral, and interest data, you build a really rich profile of what your audience is and what their needs are, and you can then market to them so much better, be it through messaging, be it through timing. Timing is so crucial as well. So absolutely, knowing what our event attendees are reading day to day is so powerful. It's so powerful, whether we're writing the conference program, whether we're writing marketing materials, whether we're understanding how to reposition an event to meet the needs of a market. So the community piece for us has been going for many, many years, because the goal is to have the number one magazine, the number one website, the number one event in the space, right? So that's a 365 community that we're serving through multiple channels. We probably email them also 20 times a day with relevant newsletters. So that piece is already there. The piece that we're adding, or the layer we're adding, is really the big data understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we've invested in new systems that allow us to do that, both front end, that are capturing it, but both back end as well, that are just running through it all and pulling out the trends. So we've got our own data team in Dartford, and they're great at kind of picking from all of that information and working out what that means for us as a business.
Yeah, because we talk a lot, we hear a lot about community engagement and 365 models and all this sort of stuff, but when you're of a certain age, like myself as well, and ultimately, we've been trying to serve communities and serving communities forever and a day, right? So we're just doing it with different tools, arguably better tools, with more visibility, as you say, of data and what we can do with that data, and the speed as well of how we can manipulate that data to give us, I guess, insights and affect outcomes.
Yeah.
Would you sort of agree with that?
That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
And I think I would say that no one's got it right. Some people have pulled out altogether. Well, from what I know, no one's got it right. Yeah.
What does getting it right mean? What would that look like?
Well, I suppose. Yeah, good question. Would it be that you're directly monetizing that particular activity, as opposed to what we're doing is making secondary money off an activity?
Yeah.
We're investing in developing community products that actually generate money over here, by improving and enhancing other products, but also evolving other products. So you can see it becoming a bit more blended, for sure.
Sure.
But it goes back to our original question. People don't ask to be part of communities; they want the benefit of it. Whatever that is: timely information, the ability to network with exactly the right people, a service that they can tailor to what they want. That's what people want. They don't think I really want to be part of a community.
Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned, or you touched upon before, acquisitions, and this sort of also dovetails into what we've been speaking about communities, because obviously as a business, if you're looking at either launching or acquiring, integrating some way different product sets, one way of doing that, sometimes quicker, is through acquisitions. And for those listening or watching, they might have read that obviously Mark Allen Group have been, I guess, pretty prolific over the last, couple of years, and obviously before that, but definitely from what I've seen in the last couple of years in terms of acquiring, whether it's publications or events to serve either existing or new communities. And we were talking when we first did our sort of pre-chat about acquisition strategy, and I've had a bit of experience in that myself. Is it more sort of opportunistic? Is it more strategic? Is it a combination of? Talk to me about the sort of acquisition strategy, if there is one, and the process of how that works.
Without doubt, it's a combination of.
Yeah.
You can have the best strategy in the world, but it has to, all the pieces have to line up.
Sure.
Because you're dealing with factors that are beyond your control. Somebody may just, we have a list of potential acquisitions. We look at it every year, but those businesses, the owners need to want to sell, and then they need to want to sell at the right price. So yes, there is logic behind what we do. If you look at the last two acquisitions we've made, health and safety at work and primary care and public health, the Sterling events, fantastic events. Health and safety is aligned to our HR magazine, one of our stronger magazine brands, and we've got a massive primary health publication business, which itself has a large number of sort of conference type events as well. So that's a perfect synergy. Lots and lots of the same clients. EMEX as well. The energy management show that we've just run actually for the first time as our own in November. Lots and lots of overlap in clients with our engineering portfolio.
Sure.
And I think that's they're great. They're great acquisitions to have. But yeah, there's a bit of luck with it, bit of luck with timing. But we do say no. We do say no to opportunities as well if they don't fit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And again, for those that aren't aware, just give us a sense of, so you've acquired, I guess, legally and formally the business, and obviously the people with the business in the main will come with it. How do you go about sort of integrating a new set of people? So you've got human capital, to give it its phrase, and then obviously the product itself. Just talk to us about that process, whether it's the first 3 months we do this, 6 months. If someone's listening and interested in that bit?
Yeah. Well, checklist was good, but it's again or the only ones I've experienced have been relatively low numbers of people. So a lot of it is very personalised approach and working with the individuals as to how best it could be. As I say, we've got the established back office infrastructure. So moving things onto our finance system is incredibly easy. The data usually works pretty well. Again, we've got the team in Dartford that do all that, and there's a cleaning, deduping, and that sort of things. But the bringing the people on board is as you would with I suppose any new starter. However, you're dealing with somebody who's running a product that they've run for many years. So it's spending time with them, it's communication.
But it can be, I guess, quite an emotional process, right? If you approach me and I was like, I'm looking to I guess my phrase, cash in on my hard work, it's potential exit. I've built a show up for a number of years. typically, I guess some of these deals that you structure will be on an earn-out basis. So I have to stay with the business for 2, 3, 4 years, achieve certain targets before I can leave. That can be quite emotional, right? Regardless of what money I've got down on the table on day one, I've got to work for someone again to a certain extent, for a period of time. What sort of things can you put in place to sort of ease that transition from sort of owner to part owner for a period of time?
I think as a business in general, we give people a lot of autonomy. So there's a reason we've bought an event from somebody. It's because it's good and it works. So we also don't do any of the, we haven't, while I've been around, done any really, really long earnouts. So the earnouts are less than a year in every case. It tends to be deliver the next edition of the event, these targets. So we're quite light touch. And we don't necessarily come in going, our way is better, start doing it this way.
Sure.
As I say, we go back to the reason we bought it, and we sort of let people run it as they do. And then as we come up to the event, so we've just done this with Emex, we come up to the event, we start moving things across. And it's very, very operational at this point, actually, and it's quite interesting because of that. So, if we're moving the floor plan from their floor plan system to our floor plan system for the rebook. And we sort of discuss how they do the rebook versus how we would like to do it, and we agree a way that works for the customers and works for our standard practices.
Sure.
But on the whole, it is light touch. What people are usually quite excited about is what the rest of the group can offer. So straight away it's like, well, how do we bring the publications in to support your marketing campaign? How do we get you some timely editing and things like that? So the benefits usually are really good for the person who's going through that process of selling the business to us.
Sure. So I guess in summary, as a business, you're always looking at potential new acquisition targets. As you said, you've probably got a list, and I guess you have conversations and they take a while to sort of manifest, and you see how you sort of play with each other in a nice way before you sort of go formally into an agreement.
That's it. I think it's what we're all doing. We've all got our ears to the ground. We're all out there kind of having coffees with people that may or may not lead to anything, and just calling people to see how they're going. And I think the fascinating thing once you're at a certain level in the events industry is all of the MDs and CEOs just talk to each other, right? If you're an ED or if you're in the sales teams, you tend to be, it's quite competitive, and you sort of think, my enemy. But there's kind of so much that's going on, above that.
It makes sense, and I guess it's a relatively small community. That's what I found over the last 2 or 3 years of sort of doing this. The same people crop up and the same conversations, and
it's a ridiculously small community. It is.
Talking about events, just going to go to sort of just focus on sort of exhibitions. Broad question: what do you think makes a good exhibition, and how do you think sort of follow up? How do you think that's changed over the years?
It's a very good question.
On the face.
I'm not sure it's changed. I'm not sure what makes a good exhibition has actually changed. And I certainly don't think the pandemic has changed it. There are parts to it that have changed, but it's about providing something that meets the needs of a market. Whatever that may be, and it's how do people behave, and there's slightly off topic, but I got an electric car a year ago, and it never occurred to me when I got it, but I no longer go to petrol stations, and I never thought about this at the time that I would no longer go to petrol stations. So I stopped going to supermarkets years ago because of online shopping. So now I no longer go to petrol stations, and that makes you think, hang on a minute, what does a petrol station have to be to attract electric vehicle owners, right? It's got to completely change, because it has to be somewhere I want to spend 15 to 45 minutes. It's not I'm no longer competing for the cheapest fuel. I'm competing for someone's time. And I think that's where events have got harder, see, it did link just about.
It did.
And that kind of, we are competing much. Time is certainly more precious. And I think with people not going into offices, those routines have been thrown. And, I did a small stint at, when I was at Ocean, a small stint looking after consumer shows. And
wedding shows, right? Wedding shows?
Yeah, why? They're so hard. They are so hard.
I used to run to the small ones.
And the challenge with consumer shows is you're not competing against another show. You're competing against anything else somebody could do on a Saturday.
Sure.
And you're competing against washing the car. You're competing against their team making it to the cup final. And suddenly you've got to really think about how much you value the time of your customer's time. That's a premium thing. How do we get somebody to give us their time? And a bit like the petrol station, it's not about price. It's not about being cheap. It's about being somewhere people want to be.
But that definitely, sorry to interrupt you, that has changed sort of post-pandemic, or I've seen that in terms of people being more discerning as to what they're going to attend. So what do you think we can do, or what are you doing differently maybe to try and mobilise audiences to get to the event? Is it the content has changed? Is it more experiential? Are you doing more sort of hosted by or one-to-one meetings? What sort of tactics, I guess these are tactical things, are you finding that's working?
On the tactics, definitely hosted by and one-to-one meetings, so absolutely. But the original challenge is people are definitely more discerning, but it's still about producing something that is of an incredibly good quality, and quality means it's somewhere people want to be.
Sure.
So it meets a need they have. So it always comes back to producing the product the customer wants.
Yeah. Simple, right?
Yeah. So how do you do that? You listen to the customer, and how do you do that? Well, you have more touch points with the customer.
Yeah.
You have brands the customer wants to engage in. So it all comes back, and I don't necessarily have any brilliant marketing tricks. And in fact, we would invest more in trying to develop the product, but that is marketing, right? If you study marketing,
sure,
marketing is creating products customers want to buy.
Yeah,
it's not the comms piece of it. So I think that's going around. So let's jump to the sort of two things we're seeing, and the one-to-one meetings is really, really important, really, really big. We've got a few brands that already do that incredibly well. Our GHI brand does it brilliantly, and they are very, very profitable as a result of it. But this is the thing that we've seen that's come from the pandemic the most. So, digital events disappeared as quickly as they arrived, but that takeaway piece, that the ability to pinpoint, I want to talk to that person, has stayed. And that also links to ROI and subsequent measures people use to justify their spend.
So again, it's using the tools at our disposal, and tech specifically to facilitate, and act as a conduit between the event, conduit between the buyer and the seller, essentially, I guess, if it's a transactional event, but you get the point.
And combine that, and we're quite fortunate here, and it sounds like I am just preaching the Mark Allen way, but we've also the mega events, like the massive trade shows, are the ones that have become the slowest to come back. And the more niche things have come back quicker, and people understand it because it's a more measurable ROI, and that comes back to the more discerning, whether it's spend or time. Specific shows have come back quicker in our experience. And if you think about the pandemic, reset a lot of the competitive aspects of shows. So the really big generic shows got bigger because of the one-upmanship between the different exhibitors. So every year, and I know this from my time years and years ago, World Congress, every year they have to outdo their competitors. So the show grows because of that. We create a platform where we encourage competition. That platform itself grows because we encourage competition and outdoing each other, because you've got to be more visible, you've got to be bigger.
Sure.
Less of a need for that within niche shows, because you aren't necessarily fighting for one person in 10,000. Or everyone who comes through that door is going to be aware of you and interested in your brand.
Yeah.
That competitive momentum was reset by the pandemic. Those are coming back more slowly.
Sure, makes sense. Thank you. Just want to touch upon sustainability and I guess the approach that Mark Allen Group takes, because I know specifically you do that through the products that you have, right? So talk to us about that, because obviously sustainability thrown around a lot as a buzzword, and more, people are saying it's going to be something that the exhibition industry in many ways are going to have to be and are more aware of. Talk to me about Mark Allen's approach with sustainability.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously there's many takes on the word.
Sure.
And from a product perspective, we've got, we have a couple of events that I suppose you arguably serve that market. All of our events, the other way of looking at sustainability is to look at zero wastage, or more efficient and effective ways of doing things. So we're looking at that in respect to everything we do, really. As a strategy, it's a space we do want to do more events in, but as I say, we're very keen to keep it niche. I don't think there's a need for generic sustainability shows, because it doesn't meet any specific need. And how are you going to get somebody there? Because it's everything. It's all around us. It's every aspect of day-to-day life. So I think, there's also another way of looking at sustainability around the business itself.
Yeah.
And we take a very long-term view on how we develop products. We're not trying to smash and grab. So there you're building sustainability of brand, you're building sustainability of employment, and all of these other things. I think from an environmental perspective, and I appreciate I'm jumping around a bit, it's a tough gig. It's a tough gig what we do, right? And I think we have to be aware of how much we throw away when we leave an exhibition hall, and reducing that is very important. And I think that's going to be the cost of build is going to be as big a factor. So I think the timing is all come together quite well around sustainability, because we will just do less. So the big builds are very, very expensive for everybody. They're expensive for the exhibitors, they're expensive for the organizers, and they're very, very wasteful. So it's finding other ways of meeting. Exhibitors don't exhibit an event to be at the event. They exhibit an event for the result of being at the event.
Yeah.
So we can all meet that in different ways. One-to-one meetings is one way. If you've got a really good one-to-one meeting schedule, why do you need to build a 2-story exhibition stand that is going to cost £1 million and all be burnt afterwards?
Sure. I think also it's going to be a lot of travel considerations as well, right? So you've already got European countries, banning certain types of internal travel. People are going to be more discerning about if they fly or take a train somewhere, or are they going to only go to an event where it's very local to them? So I think by definition, that's going to change the makeup and style of events going forward. Do you sort of agree with that?
I agree. Yeah. And in a way, it sort of supports my my view on niche versus generic.
Yes.
Because you have to, it has to be really important. It has to be important to get on that plane. I've seen the arguments, and it is valid to say by enabling 100 meetings for one person in a certain place, you're actually saving X number of journeys. And sure. So it does work out that way, but only if it's valuable to the individuals that are doing it.
Sure. just a couple of more sort of point topics that we're going to discuss. So just want to touch upon leadership. As you said, you run a team, I think, in your team of 70 people.
Yeah.
Which I guess is different if you're running a team of 5 people, or even 400 people. What do you think makes a good leader? What are the sort of traits that a leader has to display?
I think this is something that's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Over the last few years, and I'm not sure I am a good leader.
Fair enough.
But I suppose that may make me a good leader. In that reflection, that personal challenge. But I think right now that it's about integrity, people engagement, humility. I want to continually improve things. That's kind of my drive. Sure. Whether that's the people I'm working with, the products they're working on, or the bottom line, the business I'm working for. Going back to the lessons of being an MD in my 30s, you realise that actually, unless you're dragging and pulling and pushing, and hopefully being pushed as well forwards, nothing's really happening. So I think what has changed is what people want from a job, and we know there's talent shortages. We know recruiting is really tough, and I think leaders have to be more flexible around that, and offer a more personalised experience for every employee. It's emotional intelligence, self-awareness. These things are really, really important. And then energy, right? Energy. You've got to go in every day, and if you're not upbeat, if you're down and you're struggling, then you see that it just rubs off on other people.
And thank you. And you mentioned talent there, actually, and obviously that dovetails into leadership, because you're also leading a team of many talents. If we accept specifically from an exhibition point of view that there's been a talent drain in certain areas, and even generally, what can the industry do to attract more talent or new talent, either from different industries or even graduates when they're thinking about entering the workforce? What do you think we can be doing better as an industry?
Well, I think you all need to have a brilliant recruiter like Claire.
Let's definitely give a name to Claire Wise, who is one of your internal recruiters at Mark Allen Group.
Yes.
Who, in all seriousness, done a great job, sort of, showing the face of the Mark Allen Group on socials.
It certainly has. Although potentially only to the exhibition echo chamber. So your question around how do we find people outside the sector is a really good one. Yeah. And there's 2 parts to it. One is how do we employ today's workforce, which requires a lot more flexibility, requires people to take an outcomes-based, not input-based approach to measuring success, measuring productivity, and things like that. So, work is an activity, not a place. And you've got to accept that if you can achieve that perfect win as a company, where you're only measuring output, the output is right, and the people who are working for you see that as well. That's a really great position, but it requires good systems. It requires very mature and intelligent management to be able to do that. There's no point measuring inputs if the results aren't good enough. The challenge about bringing people into the sector, I think, is around evolving. It's not about perception, I don't believe. I think the exhibition industry, publication industry are viewed well externally. They're seen as interesting. Yeah. The challenge is the roles themselves can be quite repetitive. And I think you asked me about why I've moved, and I sort of said right at the very start, I was having a great time at Informa, but just kind of got bored.
Yeah.
And so, and I was a portfolio director at the time, right? And I was getting bored.
Yeah.
So, imagine what it's like for your delegate salesperson or your marketing exec that's just doing the same thing over and over again. So I think there are systems that will allow, the improved IT systems, etc., allow those repetitive tasks to be automated. It's really important we get to that quickly. And it's really important you have leaders and managers that encourage creativity and encourage new ways of doing things. Like some of the best new event launches have come from the sectors they are in, not from the events industry.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of this. We need to be aware of doing things differently is important. So not only are we likely to get better products, we're likely to get more talented workforce.
It makes sense. I think, and also depending on the structure and ownership of the business, and hopefully this lends itself, I guess, more to the type of ownership, sort of family, independent ownership in Mark Allen Group, maybe rather than a private equity led one. It should allow for people and staff to try different things, be creative, because not necessarily, you've got a 3-year trajectory and you're selling the business, and actually it's very sort of turnkey, both in terms of the products and the individuals. We sit here at the end of the year. This is going out at the beginning of the year. Talk to me about some predictions in any areas of sort of exhibitions, publications, maybe 2 or 3 that you think, if we're going to do this again this time next year, and I look back and say, what did Tim say? Give us a flavour, or maybe even the things that you think are going to be front and centre over the next 12 months.
Front and centre. Look, you're going to see a load more events in the sustainability space for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. We're looking at it. Everyone's looking at it. Sustainability. There's some other cool sort of tech areas. Everybody will have some kind of one-to-one meeting offer within their events. That, and I think that's where digital is going to add real value. And the cool advancements around what you can do with marketing, and that evolves into that on-site experience, right? So,
sure,
if you're using that level of matchmaking in your marketing, use it on site as well for people. So, that mass personalization piece, I think, so that we'll finally see those sorts of digital platforms working well. You are going to see multiple touch points through the year. The pure play exhibition companies have pretty good content programs now and are doing things through the year as well. So I don't know any that are just turning up for 2 days and then disappearing for the rest of the year anymore.
Sure.
And I think probably can I end by predicting more change? Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that is certain is life is change. And the only thing is certain is either someone will change it for you, or will change it for yourself. And that's what I've learned. So, Tim Willoughby, Managing Director at Mark Allen Exhibitions, thank you so much for your time today. We wish you well in the new year and look forward to welcoming you back. And we'll play back these predictions and see which ones have come true. Thank you so much.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Dan, and thanks for everything you're doing.